Now it's recording.
Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of the Fat Jockey podcast. This week, Kev, Jono, and myself are going to be discussing the key contenders in the Gold Cup, and hopefully we'll be able to suggest some bets at the end. So, or maybe it'll be Jono and myself doing that while Kev eats his KFC and drinks a load of super strength lager. So, anyway, let's get straight into it, boys. Let's get focused on the first three home last year. So, Jono, your thoughts on Millerindo, Plutard, and Album Photo for this season? Are we going to see the same 1, 2, 3 this year, or are we going to see?
I think it's very likely. For me, they set the standard by a considerable amount. To be honest, I think as soon as Monkfish was ruled out, it just meant the kind of newcomers on the block coming into the race, which is generally who you want to kind of side with. I just think none of them get me that interested, and I do actually think it was a very high caliber Gold Cup last year, to the point where I think you could argue actually that Album Photo maybe ran his best race last year. I mean, I would say if you have a look. Who did he beat the first? So yeah, he beat Annabelle Fly and Bristol de May, the first Gold Cup win. Santini and Lost in Translation second. For me, I'd have Indo and Aplutar as the better pair. I think if you looked at the RPRs, 178 on his first Gold Cup win, 172 and 175 last year. So it was only £3 off his first win last year. So yeah, I think it's incredibly strong form. I think the first two from last year, especially, they're the two to focus on. Although I do think Album Photo has been dismissed a little bit too much, just given his odds. But yeah, I mean, if I could waffle on for ages with the three of them, if I just start with Aplutar would be my number one. I think he showed no signs of the race being too hard at Haydock. People will argue that the race fell apart or the race wasn't even good enough. I think there's a bit of hindsight there where going into the race, I think actually it looked a fairly decent bet fair. It's never the strongest race on the whole. And I think people kind of mocked it after what he did in the race, and it did fall apart. But I think there's no doubt he's improved from last year. I think his jumping improved. It will get tested again in better company, but it's always actually been a bit sketchy. Even if you looked at when he lost to Casgrace Paddy, Ballyasheen, he was making mistakes it wasn't just the very best grade 1 races. He's always been a little bit of a sketchy jumper. So I don't think you can just poke holes at the field and say that's why he jumped so well. I think he showed considerable improvement in that department. I just love his profile, basically. I think he's 7 years old, going on 8, which is actually it's actually the age that most of the kind of the newcomers will be. Chantry House, Envoy Allen, if he were to turn up, Eclat de Rear, Asterion Falange, Galvin, they're all 8 years old. So although he kind of is considered someone that's been there, done it in one of the older horses as such, he's the same age. He's fairly lightly raced, actually, especially with a lot of his runs over 2 miles. And I think if you were to target the 7-year-olds that have run in the Gold Cup, actually, if there's no kind of ill effects from that run, I think there's a lot of evidence actually that they go on and improve on that. I mean, just looking here, so you got Album Photo, won the Gold Cup at 7, followed it up again at 8 years old. Nature River was 3rd in the race at 7 years old, came back and won the race 8 years old. Sizing John and Sir Deschamps, Sizing John won the race, Sir Deschamps was 2nd, both as 7-year-olds. Unfortunately, they neither got the chance to follow up that next year, but they both did follow up a Punchestown in the Punchestown Gold Cup. So again, I think still progressed. Manella Rocco, second of 7 years, he didn't get the chance to follow up either. But Jackadam, second of 7, second of 6 and 7 years old, came fourth, 8 years old. So there's plenty of horses that have taken on the Gold Cup at 7 years old and kept going the following season. Won the race. So yeah, I'm not in any way worried that he's kind of missed his chance as such. I think that was obviously, and that was something that I kind of went along with. I didn't back Native River in the year that he won it because I wrote a line through him, despite a lot in his favour that year. I just thought horses, unless their quarto star was a great, they just don't come back. I'm a lot more open to that now, and I think when you look at the evidence, there's criteria there that Aplutar is an age that I think he can go on and improve. It would only be his 6th run over 3 miles, which actually isn't that much.
Are you saying you prefer Aplutar to Manella Indo than now?
For me, yes. Between the pair, I think it comes down to when you back them. I think from here on in, Manella Indo is going to be the value between the pair. I based on how I think Christmas will play out. If Manella Indo goes to the King George, I don't think he'll win. And I think Aplutar, there's a good chance he'll win at Leopardstown. If I hadn't have backed the horse, if I hadn't have backed even now, I would probably back Indo between the pair. I don't think there's that much between them. However, the start of the season, I know it's not much help right now, but Aplutar was 10-1, Manella Indo was 6-1, and that to me was too big. I do think Aplutar has improved. Manella Indo hasn't done anything wrong, but at the same time, I don't. He ran a fine kind of seasonal comeback for what you expected from him. He's obviously a much better horse at Cheltenham, but I don't think I saw improvement there. So yeah, I think Aplutar is the most likely winner for me. However, if I was looking at the race fresh now, and if I was to have a bet between now and March, I would probably side with Manella Indo, just because I think what is it, a couple of points difference now. That's probably only going to get bigger. But yeah, I think Aplutar has plenty in his favour for me. Obviously, Manella Indo does at the same time, but I'll let one of you guys speak now because
you agreeing with that, Kev? Are you on the same line as that?
Unfortunately, yeah, a bit boring. But the only thing I would say, if I was having a bet,
give much your beer in your KFC, then I'll go next.
If I was looking at the 3 from last year now, like I still like Albion Photo as the bet 20-1. I think when, as a lot of people did when Monkfish was ruled out, Aplutar did look like a decent bet at 10-1. Obviously, it's easy to say in hindsight because he's now shortened. Since then, Manella Indo has gone from 6-1 to 5-1, despite being beaten by Frodon. People are willing to forgive that. That's fine, but it just means for me as a bet at 5-1, I wouldn't fancy that now. But that means I also wouldn't fancy Aplutar at 3-1 as a bet now. I'd back neither, and I'd back the horse, although he'll be 10. It's a horse at 20-1, so he's 4 times bigger than the Manella Indo, but his Gold Cup record is 1-1-3, and the Gold Cup's littered with horses that have run well. They've been there and done it. It's quite a unique test. There's nothing original about saying like back a 2-time Gold Cup winner and a 3rd place. But if I was having a bet, I'd so much sooner back Albion Photo at 20-1 each way than I would have a win bet on Manella Indo or Aplutar, and I just at this point there's no chance I'd back Manella Indo as a bet to nothing at 5-1. I think on the day I'd back him at 5-1. If he was 5-1, I'd take a wallop at that. No chance now. I agree with you. I wouldn't think the King George would suit. So of those 3, I think the bet now is Albion Photo, and it was 2 weeks ago when I backed it. I'd still back that now. nothing to make me change that. I think they're going to try a different route with him this year, aren't they? They're not just going to wait for the race.
I was gonna say, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think I think the reason it worked the first time, and then if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And then it was broke because he didn't win, so they're going to try something different. There's absolutely no problem with that. Again, like there's just, I mean, we'll get to the other contenders soon, I suppose. But just how many are there 3 horses that you confidently say they will get ahead of Album Photos level? So you've got 2 horses that did that last year. Fine. How many more can do that? I still think at 20 to 1 that is the bet of the 3, only because I've already backed one of them, I suppose, and it's just a case of waiting. If Manella Indo gets pushed out any bigger, I imagine that would be a trigger for me to back him as well, and I'll just have dutched those 3 and just be quite happy with that and just go from there. So yeah, I suppose that's as short as I can keep it, but I pretty much agree. But I do think Album Photo would be the most interesting of those 3 at this stage.
Yeah, look, I'm going to also agree with that. I think Album Photo at 20 to 1 is a complete no-brainer of a price, isn't it? I'm amazed he is that.
Got no brains if you back it.
I'm amazed he's that price. You know, dual winner, placed, only beaten 5 or 6 lengths last year. Those 3 were 25 lengths clear of everything else. At least 25 lengths clear of everything else. You know, so nothing from last year is going to come spoil that party. So you've got to look at the sort of new kids on the block, and I don't think many people.
It's a bit like a Sharjah price, isn't it? Where, you know, when like Sharjah's 25 to 1 or 20 to 1 for a champion hurdle, but at least the horse has been and won it, and it's more of a unique test. So yeah. I agree.
It's again, I think we've touched on it before. It's that typical overreaction. Placed horses just the following year, they just kind of get disregarded, don't they? It's like, absolutely. I mean, obviously, Album has won the Gold Cup 2 times, but it's kind of just seen as, only came 3rd last year. That's it. Yeah.
Look, you look at the trends and the stats, and it says he's a 10-year-old now. You know, he's now been beaten in the race. You know, he can't come back and win the race after that. He's had 14 lifetime runs. That's beyond. You know, it's more than a typical winner has. All the stats and trends say Album Photo can't win the Gold Cup. But what I will say is there's a couple of things in his favour here. We've just said that he was only beaten 5 or 6 lengths last year, and Willie Mullins is on the record as saying he undercooked his prep. You know, Willie's not one for making bullshit statements, is he? Let's be honest. If he says he undercooked his prep, he undercooked his prep. How much undercooking a prep means in a Gold Cup, I don't really know, if I'm honest, because I don't really know how much he was undercooked. But 5 or 6 lengths, I think he's still a player. I genuinely think he's still a player. You've got to ignore some stats, but if you're going to ignore stats, who's the big stats and trends buster at Cheltenham? That's Willie Mullins.
Presenting Percy, no.
My droga, that's it, mate. If you look at the consistency of his profile as well, in all of his 8 chases outside the novice company, every chase he's hit the 170s in terms of RPRs, every single one. He's like a metronome. Obviously, last season was a lower RPR, but as I said, if Willie says he was undercooked, he was undercooked. So he's entitled to be a better horse this season. After 14 chases and a relatively light raced horse for a 10-year-old, there's no reason to think he's regressing yet. There's no reason to think that he can't run to the same level as he's run to previously. And if that level is slightly better than last year, and Willie straight after the race said he was undercooked, then he's right bang there, isn't he? He's right. I think
it's interesting. Where do you guys see him at Christmas? Because obviously they tried to get him out a couple of times. Ironically, he might not have a seasonal debut till around the same time Christmas or New Year's as he has the last couple of seasons. Do you think he'll go to Tramore again, or do you think he'll go?
I think Will has said that that's the plan now, hasn't he? Hasn't he said
No,
that's the plan now? Because I think they wanted him out sooner and they missed the engagement because of the ground, and I think he's reverted back to plan A. So I think the plan is to go to Tramore and go the route he went last year and the season before. So I think they've reverted. I'm sure if that's incorrect, somebody will put it on the forum, but I'm sure I picked that up somewhere in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
It makes sense, wouldn't it? So
yeah. Well, he's missed his seasonal engagement, his seasonal prep. That's gone. So you just go back to what you know, don't you? But he'll get more work prior to the festival. It'll just work him harder. So, if there's 2 or 3 pounds of improvement to come by just having him hard fit, he's right there on the line with the other two. So, we can talk about him being, a bit of a no-brainer, 20 to 1 each way shot, but I don't think he's out of the picture for the win. Having said all that, I don't think he's my winner. I think, in contrary to you two, I think Manella Indo's my winner. And I've got a few reasons for that. I think Manella Indo was a good winner last year. And Jack Kennedy's on record as saying that when a Plutard came to him, he was idling. And when he came to him, he picked up again. So there was more in the locker. And that's quite an interesting statement. Rachel Blackmore said, potentially there's more improvement to come from a Plutard this season. But actually, based on what Jack Kennedy said, I'm more along the lines that Manella Indo can go and find more. So there is more in the locker. He's capable of running to potentially that 180 figure in a Gold Cup. That's something that Album Photo hasn't done. So if I can believe that Manella Indo can run to a higher rating last year, which I do, I think actually Album Photo doesn't win this, isn't on the line with Manella Indo. I think Manella Indo will go and find the 2 or 3 pounds that he possibly would need to find against two horses that can improve on their performance last year. And I'm saying this, about a Gold Cup, which is incredible, really. So for me, I think Manella Indo is still the one. I think there's also it's a bit of a ground thing going there. I'd be prepared to switch from Manella Indo if the ground was soft, because whilst he's not fully ground dependent, he is a better horse on good to soft ground. When it's genuine soft, I think that swings the balance in favour of Plutard. So
I think
more of just says we get a good soft Gold Cup, and so Manella Indo is the one in the frame for me. He's the bigger price of the two, and I'm not going to sit here and advocate anybody back him at 5 to 1 right now, because I don't think anybody needs to. Point that Jono made about he's not necessarily going to go and win whatever engagement he's in over Christmas is true, but I don't think by the same token there's going to be a massive drift unless there was a disaster of some kind. And I think people would remember last year. He went off in the Gold Cup at 9 to 1, which I thought was incredible, really, just because it's the old recency bias thing. Too many people follow what happened in the last race, and rather than just taking the context. So. I'm quite happy for Manella Indo not to have won a race before the Gold Cup. I still think he'll win the Gold Cup. But no doubt we've got 3 top horses, and that triumvirate's going to be really hard to break for something else. Just one other thing that I will say, you mentioned Haydock for a Plutard, Jono. I'm not buying into that 180 rating at all, by the way. If that's true, then Bristol Demise of £1 better horse, so I'm not having that. Those ratings at Haydock are just a nonsense, and you see some ridiculous ones there, the same as you do at Ascot. I think he ran a big race, probably in the 170s, but I'm not having that as a 180 at all.
I think it's been inflated. For me, it was this jumping that I was so impressed with. It wasn't like you say, Haydock. We get every year where these huge performances get notched up. They don't translate through the rest of the season. It's a strange old track, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the other comparison is probably just, some people probably hate me for saying this, but there is a bit of the Dem and Cato about the two of them as well. Probably sat in boxes next door to each other, the same as The other two were at Ditchit. And, they are different types. Malarindo for me is very much in the Denman mould. He's more of a tank, whereas a Plutar is the flashier Cato type. Now, Cato is my all-time favourite racehorse. But, I would concede that Denman was the better horse around Cheltenham. He just was, misfortune sort of robbed him of probably a couple of Gold Cups, really. And played into Cato's hands. Away from Cheltenham, Cato was easily the better horse in any other race anywhere else. And I think the same is probably true of Malarindo and the Plutar. I think Malarindo is the real grinder, the proper thorough stayer. Plutar is the one that's got that bit of pace. He's the flashier of the two. But, put him in a battle up that hill. I'm having Malarindo every time. So what about...
I just say you mentioned Jack Kennedy, what he said. It's also interesting. Henry de Bromhead after, I think it was on Sunday after the festival, and he also said they haven't actually got to the bottom of Malarindo. There's plenty more to come. So
I think he's one that does what he has to do.
I haven't actually backed Malarindo yet. Like you say, he's not going to get pushed out too much. He's just too obvious. But I would go as far to say I would back him regardless of, say, a King George run, even if he was stone last, would not bother me at all.
Yeah, me too. Well, I mean, he fell when beaten it in the Saddles last year, didn't he? So, was it the Saddles or was it? No, it wasn't the Saddles. It was the DRF, wasn't it?
Fell at Christmas and then came fourth in the Dublin Racing Festival.
So what about those sort of immediately behind then? I guess the horse I'm thinking of behind those three, immediately at Chantry House, a lot of money from Protector recently, and Galvin. They'd be the ones that then repeat on people's minds, I guess. Any thoughts about them?
No chance. Easy. Chantry House, laughable price. Absolutely. I do not understand how he's so short. I don't understand what the Marsh run, like he's Envoy Allen's fallen, so that race is moot point. Not interested in that as form going forward because the odds on favourite's fallen, and then anything he's done since isn't it? I've never liked him, and I don't understand. I don't know what the case for him would be. Like I looked at the price, I don't understand what the case would be for him. Protectorat, I want to hate, and I can at least see the case for that. And Galvin was put up at 40-1, and I think that was it was Norton's coin, wasn't it, who put an excellent case together and made me back him from initially not backing him. He's not going to be good enough, is he really? But there's no harm in backing him because he's such a foreign favourite. But just unless the three better horses don't turn up, which is feasible, but that isn't really a strategy. I've just got absolutely no interest in. I've tried to read the cases for Chantry House, and obviously not being disrespectful to anyone, I've just not read any of them and thought that they're right in any way. So I've just absolutely no interest. I think he's an absolutely horrible price. Absolutely horrible.
Fair enough. Can you make a case for any of those, Johnny? Or would you?
No, I've tried. I mean, Chantry House, I think actually on paper, he's actually got a good profile. He's the second season chaser, won the Marsh. He'll be 8 years old. I know Henderson is a bit of a laughing stock at the moment, but he's still a Henderson trained runner. I think he's only finished outside. He's 8 out of 10 under rules.
That Marsh, he beat Fusel Raffles 3 lengths, which is I just don't care. I don't. It's not even. It's just not a relevant piece of Cheltenham form. And I bang the drum about backing them blind and stuff. So I'm sure he might come back to bite me. But he beat Fusel Raffles 3 lengths. Who cares? Not interested.
Yeah. He's on paper. I wouldn't be completely shocked if he. I don't think he's the level of winning, but I think in hindsight, you might look at him and go, "Yeah, I can see why he won." Actually, just the type of horse he is. But I don't think he will, just because the standard is so high.
Is it
there's
not?
other
Is it
horses
not?
that
Is it not the Aintree run? Like, so he's walloped Shamblu, but Shamblu just another off the production line of good British horse early in the season. No one cares. Same as my Drogo will end up similar to Protectorat.
Right.
Just they put in a good performance every now and again. People go overboard, walloped when it comes to a proper Grade 1 race. He's got absolutely no chance of winning a Gold Cup. He's probably not going to be good enough to be. He'll definitely be a bigger price than he is now.
Even Aintree, he was lucky to win. Debatable, but yeah, I would go he was lucky to win that one.
Well, look, I mean, looking at those three for me, I certainly can't have Protectorat. He's got plenty of experience around Cheltenham. He's won a couple of times around there, and I know one of the cases that have been levelled against him is that he's going to be an Aintree horse. Well, I'm not sure about that. He put it in a really good performance at Aintree last time. Visually, it was impressive, but he beat nothing. Definitely a subpar native river, and there's nothing in behind that. And he was given a 172 RPR for that, I think it was. Again, a bit of a nonsense racing for me, that one. People liked his run behind Midnight Shadow in the Paddy Power Gold Cup off top weight, giving, was it half a stone away or whatever it was. But if it was a Gold Cup horse, you want him to be winning, by giving more than a stone away against, and it's the wrong trip anyway. He's the sort that I can see running for a long way in a Gold Cup and just running out of petrol, if I'm really honest. He's the sort that will be hard in the bridle, cruising around and coming down the bottom of the hill and just tamely fading away. That's what I think of him, really. He'll give the owners a really good spin and they'll be getting excited, but I just can't see, once he's hitting the straight, that he's going to be there. I think he'll just be.
You've also got a question. I mean, I don't. Could you trust Harry Skelton 3 mile 2 to judge the pace right, get the fractions right with a keen horse? Just, I would be worried.
Yeah, look,
I don't fancy him at all. But
look, I don't think that bothers me too much. There are other jockeys that are going to want to be somewhere near the front, and they'll find their own pace. But I think it's less about Harry Skelton, more about a typical Gold Cup and the way it's run. Irrespective, whether Harry Skelton judges the fractions or not. I think, it's normally a strongly run race, and as a consequence, I just don't see him getting home. But for me, I'd be running him in the Ryanair. I actually think he'd give Allaho something to think about in the Ryanair.
He wouldn't, just because by the time we get there, the horses, the Mullins and Elliott horses and de Bromhead, they'll be aimed at Cheltenham, and that's where they find this extra, and it comes from nowhere. By this time, they've got nothing else. Skelton's not at the level yet where he's going to get an extra few pounds for Cheltenham, and don't get me wrong, he's fantastic, and some of his handicap horses are brilliant, and I'm sure he will get there. But Protectorat isn't the horse that is going to be better in March than he is now. The performance he's put in already this season will be his best performance this season. There's no chance he's getting near Allaho. Allaho will absolutely wallop him if he lines up.
I'm not sure about that. If Allaho can put in the same performance as last year, I agree with you. But how often do you? We're on a different subject, but how often do you see horses that can put in that kind of performance 2 years running? It just doesn't happen. Allaho won't put in that kind of performance again. He may still put performance in that's good enough to win it. Don't get me wrong. But
it'd be like when Frodon won
several horses.
When Frodon won, and I
think that's a good point with Skelton, though. It will change over time. So many times these horses of his, they come out. For me, he doesn't hold anything back. So the kind of first half of the season, we see these big performances. Protectorat this year, he actually did. Yeah, Shamblu, Protectorat last year, third time lucky. They post these big old ratings, like RPRs in the high 150s, low 160s, and generally they don't really improve come March. And I think that's the key difference. You know that Mullins, even Henderson, they're holding back. They're training for the spring in mind, and I think Yeah,
I
every
think there's
year
some
we've
truth
seen
in
he's
that. Those flat out choke out performances take something out of a horse. And you can't peak a horse many times in a season. You can perhaps get away with, something early season and then peaking again. Letting the horse down at some point in the season, and then peaking again later. And it may well be that's what they do, by the way. I think they may actually do that with third time luck. I think they probably learned the lesson there that they've gone to the well so quickly. And that's backfired on them. They want to get experience into the horse, and I absolutely understand that, because that will stand the horse in good stead in March. But the reality is that they've now got to get that horse back to that kind of form and better in March, and that's tough. Anyway, we're digressing. So on Chantry House, I'm not sure I agree with you, Kev. I understand why you say what you say. I think people have a downer on that horse, partly because he was the beneficiary of Envoy Allen's fall in the Marsh. But given what we've seen since then, who's to say he wouldn't have won the race anyway? And I think if he had won the race anyway, people would have been feeling very differently about him right now, yourself included.
I wouldn't think he's up
I
at 12-1.
I think people
No
also
way.
have him down as Shishkin's poor cousin because he was beaten into third in Shishkin's Supreme. Again, the things that stay fresh in people's mind. He was the second string. I'd argue that he was in the wrong race. I'd have liked to have seen him in the Ballymore. I think I would have liked to see him in, facing up to Envoy Allen over hurdles. And anyway, using a Grade 1 place in a festival novice hurdle, finishing third in one of those isn't a reason to have a downer anyway. Ask the owners of Sprinter, Sacre and Bouvedere.
Do you not think that's a lazy thing to say? It's like people often do that. They look at third place in the Supreme and they go, "Well, we've got to mark that up because Sprinter Sacre was third in the Supreme." I was a big fan of Chantry House, and I thought the Supreme was the right race because he'd end up a stayer. I liked him more than Sporting John. Championed it quite a bit on the forum. Thought it was the right race. Was thrilled he placed. Always liked him. Did not like him as a chaser. I think we know he's not a Gold Cup winning animal. He's not. I don't understand. 12-1 is shorter than a dual winner, so it's easy for me to say. But I don't understand. I don't know what bit I'm supposed to have missed where he's 12-1 and I'm supposed to be.
I'll finish making the case because I'm far from finished. As you probably gather, because I talk too much. But anyway. I'm going to. If you look back right at the start of his career, he started off in the same point as Monkfish, and the pair of them. He fell in that point, but he was going every bit as good as Monkfish, and there's no reason to think that he may not have won that race. Monkfish possibly would have gone off close to favourite in this Gold Cup, if not certainly very close behind in the market, the front two. So that was his first sort of foray around 3 miles. Now, Monkfish obviously went down the Albert Bartlett route. Chantry House went down the Supreme route. Wouldn't have been the most obvious. He's got he's staying bred. So I think everything he did over hurdles, over shorter trips, was a bit of a bonus. And we've seen other horses that have had similar profiles like that. We've seen horses that have won Gold Cups with similar profiles to that. Horses like Size and John, for example, that were running over trips far too short. And he's being judged on trips short of what he needs, and he's totally unexposed over fences. Over 3 miles. He was rated 94 in his second point, which is more than Monkfish managed to achieve. Monkfish's top rating was 91. If anybody is a connoisseur of Irish point ratings, 94 is top end. It really is top draw. Anything 90 plus gets the big buyers excited. Envoy Allen, by the way, hit 94 himself. That was his highest rating over points, but that was over 2.5 miles. And he's never really convinced as a stayer in my eyes in the way that Chantry House has promised to be in my mind. So for me, I'm actually happy to believe that there's significant improvement to come from Chantry House for the step to 3 miles, and even more for the extended Gold Cup trip. He's not champion green and gold at all. He's a very different horse. He's been stepped up to 3 miles the last twice, and he's won by a total of nearly 70 lengths. He's a really good jumper. I have him down as a thrustayer that can go a championship gallop.
He's 12 to 1 then.
Yeah, price I hate the price, but I'm not discounting him as a winner or a place from the Gold Cup.
I think the reason why his price is so short is obviously a few horses like Protector out. Obviously, we don't like him, but he was one of the very few kind of novices coming home to open company, wasn't he? Once Monkfish came out, bar Chargy House, you barely had anyone. So I think he was the biggest shortener through the Monkfish injury. I think I don't actually. Aplutar kept at 10 to 1. Manila Indo might have shortened slightly, but I think Chargy House was the big mover from that injury news. Not saying it's justified, but that's why he became so short.
Yeah, great. Look, I absolutely would want bigger for a proper each way bet on him. But I think the combination of people not liking his price and some of his background, without really thinking the context through what he can be over 3 miles or extended 3 miles, proper staying tests. Hopefully there'll be some drift, because I hope everybody thinks like you do, Kev, because I'll happily take the price if he goes to 16s.
16. You think it's a good price at 16 to 1?
I think 16
Album
to 1.
Photos 20 to 1.
Yeah,
So you think he should be shorter than
Album Photos 20 to 1 and massively overpriced. That's nothing to do with the right price for Chantry House. You can make a comparison, but that's not the way to do it, is it? What's the right price?
What price would you back him?
40 to 1. 33 to 1.
He's no 40 to 1 shot.
33 to 1, I'd back him.
We're talking here about the best horses, the best second season chasers to try and break into, the old guard. He potentially is the best of those, and you want 33 and 40 to 1. It's not going to happen, is it?
Well, fair enough, but I won't back him then. It's easy because he won't win it. So no issue.
For me is around 16's mark at this stage. He potentially is the best.
If you're talking, it depends. Like if it was day of the race and he's 16 to 1 and he's 4th favourite, then that's different than now as well. If you were offering me 16 to 1 on the day and I was looking at the market, I'd be like, well, I can see that maybe, but I can't see him. Where's he going next? Where's his next run?
Well, day of the race, if he's perceived as being the best of the second season chasers, he's not going to be that price anyway. He's going to be 8 to 10s, isn't he? So that's the way the market would typically price him. Right now, that he's definitely a bit shorter than he should be. 16 is probably about right and fair. Whether you think that's a bet or not, it's a different matter. But that's really where he probably should be. 12s is too short. And I'm not recommending him as a bet. So what I am saying is I think writing him off as a non-contender, I think is wrong.
Non-contender, no hope.
Which brings me to Galvin. So I think again, there's been some talk on the forum about him, and I think a really good case made actually. I'm going to brush over him slightly. I'm going to move back to him probably later. But to be fair, he's most people would not have considered him a Gold Cup contender. Everybody was thinking about him for the cross country and the national. And then Gordon had other ideas and ran him on his merits. And to be fair, he's not looked at a place to be lining up in this. Not sure he's produced any form that makes him capable of winning it, of course. But, prior to this season, his highest racing post rating wasn't even in the 160s. He was given 172 for Down Royal, which again is also questionable in my mind. Frodon, producing his best racing post rating in his 33rd chase, I don't think so. Utter nonsense. That's a figment of somebody's imagination rather than what actually happened in the race. As a consequence, Garvin was given 172, and that wasn't a 172 performance. So I could give that low to mid 160s at best. Manila Indo wasn't his best, and he finished upside Delta Work, who's totally exposed amongst the best graded chasers. So Delta Work was given 167 for that. So again, the whole thing doesn't stack up. But what I do like about Galvin is, clearly he's a bit of a standing dish around Cheltenham now. And I like the way he runs his races. His run style, I think, can be particularly useful in a Gold Cup because the way it's run, he switches off nicely. They can. Let's assume Dave is riding him. He'll just switch him off, and he'll let him run past tired horses. And he'll be the one that I think potentially could be staying on the strongest at the end. He won't necessarily be staying on. He might be still at one pace, and the others will be stopping. But I can't rule him out of the places if I'm honest. Again, I think he's worth considering. And I'm saying no more than that at this stage. So, of that group, I'm happy to rule out Protectorat. I think as the second season chasers, Galvin and Chantry House are probably the ones that you'd be having on your mind. Any thoughts about some others at bigger prices? Anybody got any others they could throw out?
I was thinking, should we touch on? Well, Envoy Allen.
Should we rule out Envoy Allen and Asterion Falange?
That's a good point.
Should
we just rule out Envoy Allen?
Asterion Falange might shorten significantly if he goes for the King George, which why wouldn't they? And he could win that and be shorter. I wouldn't be interested in him for the Gold Cup or at 25-1, but as a bit of if you fancy him for the King George, then you could. If he gets declared for that, you could.
I thought they were quite. Willie was quite downbeat on the King George. I might have misread. Yeah, I thought King George would suit him.
I think they were talking about Allaho
down to the ground.
And had a tough race, and he won't be going.
Yeah, it was Allaho, wasn't it?
Where was Asterion Falange?
Oh, okay, I thought he kind of grouped them, but
mate. If he was going for the King George, I'd consider backing him, knowing full well I would lay it off. So probably be a waste of time, to be honest. But I know there's a couple of people on the forum are mad keen on Asterion Falange, and he's probably got a massive win in him. Well, he's just not one I'm particularly keen on now. I wouldn't back him at 25-1 unless he was.
Hasn't Saxon Moy made quite a strong case a while ago for him as a Gold Cup horse. If I'm honest, I think he's just as likely to go to the Ryanair. So that is a reason, not to have him as one of your each way shots, I guess. There's still the left-handed thing. Looks ideal to want to go right-handed. He makes some horrible mistakes. He fell again at the weekend, having looked as though he was going to turn over Allaho, but he fell. He makes far too many mistakes. He's such a chancy jumper. I don't recall a Gold Cup winner with an F next to his name during the season, by the way. I actually genuinely can't think of a single Gold Cup winner that has an F next to his name in its current season. Somebody hopefully will dig a stat out and prove that wrong. But
Courter never do it. He liked to clout a few, didn't he?
Yeah. And the other problem.
Did he not fall? Did he fall in the Tingle? Oh no, he fell in the Arkle, not the Tingle Creek.
Yeah, he did. And going for the Gold Cup trip, he's going to have to jump more fences than the Ryanair. So. Look, 25 might appeal to some people, but I think that'd be a bit of a flyer if I was really honest. It's one that
you just can't.
If it was the day that he put it all came good for him and he jumped perfectly. It was just that day. Then you could see him running a big race. But I mean, really, 25.
You just can't. You can't trust him, can you?
No, exactly.
Yeah, you can't. You can't trust him. I think if there was some kind of. And it doesn't really interest me, but if there was some kind of, they kind of do insurance faller bets, I guess, if he was a big price on the day and lined up, if you could get 16-20-1 faller insurance bet, I don't know. Because he wouldn't shock me, like you say, if he put it all together. He's the kind of horse that I would be more annoyed backing because I think the evidence is just don't trust him. I'd be more annoyed if I backed him and he lost than I would if I didn't back him and he won, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's a really talented horse, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But, they've got Alboon Photo in the race anyway. Do they really need Asterion Falange in there as well? Probably not, I think. Send him to the Ryanair, give him another season of experience jumping fences and perhaps bring him back for the race next year. He's young enough, so... I think it's a season too early, and it's another season that they can get more jumping experience into and perhaps try and solve some of those problems. But he's not for me. He's not for me. From a book perspective, maybe, but that's about it. You can.
Envoy Allen, where do you see him going?
Just wins it,
I
doesn't he?
never
Wins the
liked him
race.
for anyway. I never liked him for the race in the first place. I just don't see him as a stayer. It goes all the way back to the fact that they decided they needed to put him into a 2.5 mile point. He's not bred to stay. There's nothing that I've seen from him that makes me tempted, even remotely tempted, for a Gold Cup. And that's even if we hadn't seen the problems that we've got now. I wouldn't be putting him up for as a Gold Cup winner.
Yeah, just a bit of a sorry sight now. Even Kev's favourite horse, Tornado Flyer, beat him at the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I made a suggestion on the forum, actually. They've talked about maybe dropping back in trip and taking him back to 2 miles from the Champion Chase. These things have been talked about. I'd take him back over hurdles. He was a really useful hurdler. There's something's going on, whether it's between his ears or he's physically feeling something. Something's definitely going on, and maybe just dropping him back over hurdles to find out wouldn't be a bad thing. We've got a really
not sure Henry
hurdle division, haven't we? It could still end up in the festival for him.
Something would have to happen to Honeysuckle, wouldn't it, for Henry to start championing that? But
for him to win a Gold Cup, it's going to happen to about 10 horses.
Yeah, I agree. You can't fancy. I agree. He's not. I'd have some interest in him in a Ryanair or a Champion Chase or a Champion Hurdle or a Summit maybe, but not right now.
There's no reason to go to a Ryanair when they've got Allaho.
Well, they're happy to run against each other if that's his best trip and stuff. As a Ballymore winner, that went anywhere off.
Well, that was the trip. It's the trip he ran over at the weekend. It didn't look like a Ryanair horse, I don't think.
Oh no, but he was beaten, wasn't he? Like, it's like not every horse can win every race on the way.
No,
Allaho didn't look that good. Any horse can be beaten, can't he?
Up in the Ryanair, but
yeah.
I just got the sense there's something going on with the horse. It's either mental or physical. Whether he's not got over that bad fall, or whether that bone chip is still sore, or something along those lines, or maybe he's just remembering something and doesn't want to put it in. I don't know, but something's going on with the horse.
So while we're listening,
they need to do something completely different with him to find out. And dropping him back over hurdles to see if it sparks him up again has got to be worth a shot.
I think that's the thing with me. You can question the form of his early chase career incredibly, but he was an immaculate jumper, and that's not there now.
So, absolutely,
yeah,
exactly.
He probably isn't as good as everyone hoped, but he was a fantastic jumper. That's not the same now. So yeah, something's going on.
Well, look, maybe he can be big bucks too, whether that's over 3 miles or 2 miles or wherever it is. But it's happened before. It can happen again. He's not winning anything over fences the way things are at the moment, so they have nothing to lose and everything to gain by slipping him back over hurdles and just see what happens. But they won't do it. That's what do I know? Anyway,
a lot of time for us talking about a horse that's definitely not running there. Speaking and horses that definitely aren't going to win: Frodon, Delta Work, Champ, Janadil, Royal Pagai, Fiddler on the Roof, Shishkin is 40-1.
What do you think about Fiddler on the Roof? I think he's interesting.
I don't think a lot about him, to be honest. He's all right. I don't think he had his chance last year and wasn't good enough.
Well, he ran in the RSA, didn't he? He was second in the RSA to Mumfish.
Fiddler on the Roof.
I could see him.
Two of them were clear of the field, so he's only beaten 5 or 6 lengths by Mumfish last year.
Who am I getting confused with?
Don't know. Our Big Breakaway, the other one of
Yes, that is exactly who I'm getting confused with.
Fiddler on the Roof just finished second in
I could see him
Hennessy, the Ladbroke Trophy.
Yeah, I could see him running onto a place. I mean, yeah, just
slower. Lost in translation. I was getting confused with. Sorry.
think he's running the Ladbroke Trophy is interesting. That race has got previous for runners then running well in the Gold Cup. 33-1 actually feels too big for him for me. He ran well in the RSA, so
he can get 40.
Yeah, there's probably 40 somewhere out there with a bookmaker that won't let me put a bet on. But 33 appeals to me as a nice each way bet. Next destination, not far behind Galvin in the National Hunt Chase.
Hey, well, we don't.
66-1, but he's got
80-1, mate.
Had so many sick notes. You've got to see him being in the final decks or something. He was due to run the Ladbroke Trophy, wasn't he? He was getting quite hyped for that, and then he was pulled out late, and we've not seen him since. So there's been no word of setback, but he's not appeared anywhere. So look, he's at those kind of prices, 66 or 80s or something. He's probably worth having a small each way bet on. But even a small each way bet would come with a health warning, given he's got previous for not turning up and for time out and all the rest of it. So you want to see him run somewhere. But he'd be one of those at bigger price that might be just worth a second glance, I suppose.
He's the only one. He's the one I was closest to, like, making a case for as a long shot through the National Hunt Chase, not too far behind Galvin. And if Galvin's a horse that has then stepped up, like I fancied Galvin to beat him, but Next Destination did get well found, didn't he, on the day, and it's not unfeasible that I think he's 80-1 in a place, and I didn't end up feeling like I'd put it forward as a bet, but that was the closest I got from anything at a long price. But it was just on a line through Galvin, and that's a horse that I've only sort of backed sentiment. I think you're a bit keener on him than I am. I'm glad I've got him backed, but he's not a horse that I'm mad keen on, so I haven't convinced myself to back him yet.
Well, there's an interesting little stat that I've dug up, which is why I just wanted to hold the thought on Galvin a little longer, and it applies to Next Destination too. So there's only been 2 Gold Cup winners this century that have run over further than the Gold Cup trip, and both of those horses did that in the Welsh National. But Native River also, don't forget, previously ran in the National Hunt Chase, and he was second behind Manila Rocco. So those two were first and second in the 2016 National Hunt Chase. Mm-hmm. Following season, they finished second and third behind Size and John in the 2017 Gold Cup. And obviously, Native River then went one better the year after that. But I was just doing some digging around that, and I can't find any other National Hunt Chase runners that have gone on to run in the Gold Cup. Now, Galvin and Next Destination, Galvin almost certainly is going to, and Next Destination, that would be the intention. They'd be the only other National Hunt Chase horses that I think will actually be attempting to do that, and I've been back 20 odd years. So it's an interesting little stat, actually, because we know you have to be able to stay thoroughly to win or place in the Gold Cup. And it makes those two, just on that little stat alone, makes those two quite interesting.
I'm going to back him 80-1. Whoa.
Well, stats can be read 2 ways. Some people will read those stats and say there's only ever been 2 horses that have gone from the National Hunt Chase and placed. And they'll say it was Milano Rocco and Native River. But what they don't do is do their full research and find out they were the only ones to attempt to do it. 100% record, not a 1 in 80 years. And there's a reason for that, and that is because those 2 horses thoroughly stayed. Galvin and Next Destination have proved that they thoroughly stayed. So
Ascaria 10 wasn't far off, was he either? What is Ascaria 10? Oh my God, he's going to be.
Yeah.
Oh, he's 100-1.
He actually went off favourite in that race, didn't he? Surprisingly.
Yeah.
Wasn't
Ascaria 10, I don't think will turn up in the Gold Cup though. So there's some interesting stats to consider.
Favourite as well.
If you're happy to indulge me, there's some interesting stats around the Gold Cup. There's only been 2 winners in the last, this century that have had more than 12 chase starts, and that was Don Cossack, who had 18, and Kato Star 20. They're the exceptions. Al Boone Photos had 14. But actually, interestingly, Plutar's already had 12. So he's going to have 13, 14, probably the same as Al Boone Photo has right now. So those two actually will sit outside the stats of a typical Gold Cup winner.
Although I think it's worth, you can dig into that slightly though if you look at how many runs over 3 miles. Obviously a chase starts, but I think if you look at the amount of runs over 3 miles, Apluchar actually sits around, I think it'd be his 6th run over in a 3 mile plus chase, one of which was in his novice chase season. And actually, it's a 6th run in the Gold Cup is not actually that much, and sits around. And if you looked, Bobsworth, it was his 5th run in a 3 mile chase. Lord Windermere 5th run. Don Kozak 9th. Nature River was his 9th run over 3 miles. Albion Photo was 3rd and 5th runs. Manila Indo was his 7th run over 3 miles. So that's kind of another take.
It is, and you can also then exclude Albion Photo's runs over 2.5 miles. So he will be the right side of that stat if you take those stats, by the way. Use stats how you want to. I'm inclined to agree with you, by the way. In terms of miles on the clock, you're putting more miles on the clock in staying chases than you are in, over 2 miles and 2.5. So I'm inclined to agree with that. And that's the good thing with stats. You've got to find reasons. You can't be a slave to them. You've got to find reasons for a stat to be wrong. And I think that's a good reason to find for a stat not to hold true. But you also need to apply that to Albion Photo. So I'd just make that point as well. Interestingly, 3 of the last 14 winners came from the Ladbroke Chase, the Old Hennessy. Denman and Bobsworth both won it, and Lord Windermere finished down the field in 7th or 8th or something. And Native River won it and finished 3rd in the Gold Cup that season. So there is a link with the Ladbroke. It actually punches above its numbers, so that brings you back to Fiddler on the Roof. There's nothing else from this year's race that will run in the Gold Cup. So Fiddler on the Roof comes into the reckoning on that.
There might be one. Johnny might think there's one.
Do you think there's another one from this season's On the Ropes? Maybe, I suppose.
No, I think On the Ropes is.
I know which one you're going to say. I know which one you're going to say. I'll leave you to say the words in a second. I'll tell you why I can't win in a second as well. Usually the winner's single figures, so we've only had 2 double figure prices that have won again this century. Lord Windermere, that we've just mentioned, at 20-1, now Boone Photo himself at 12-1, and that was in his first season when I think there was probably the consensus that he was a non-stayer and he's more of a Ryanair horse. Lord Windermere won the worst Gold Cup on record. So you can find reasons for their prices to be a little bit bigger, and I don't think this is that kind of renewal. I think the winner will be a single figure price. So I don't think you need to look too far from the head of the market this year. What is interesting is there are lots of horses that have run into the places at big prices over the years: 14s, 16s, 20s, 25s, 33s, 40s, even 50s over the last few years. We've had Giant Bolster on his own, Turpin Green, Menlo Rocco, we mentioned before, 18-1, Bristol Demai, Neptune Cologne was 25s, Monmouth, Annabelle Fly 2 seasons running did it. There's been 20 big price horses that have made the frame in the last 20 years. So you can't ignore some of these horses that we've been talking about before. So, when you talk about, the Galvins, you talk about the
Next Destinations
world, even the Next Destinations, you have to consider them because horses like that do make the frame. But generally they are proper stayers. They're the horses that are still plugging on when everything else is screaming enough when they hit the bottom of the hill. So, I think we're probably talking about the right horses.
We have mentioned every single one, so we've probably nailed the winner.
Well, you were going to talk about wrong horse, Kev, so come on, far away.
That's not me, it's Johnny. Johnny fancies one.
Oh, was it Jono? Sorry, Jono.
No. So basically, we had a little look at some long shots. For me, like I said, at the front, the top two are last season, and yes, I also agree. Albion Photo, basically the top three. I think it's going to be very hard for someone to fill the places. However, like Paul says, it does happen. Basically, I'm looking at some big prices that could easily shorten on the next run. Spoken about the Ladbroke. Now, I know what Paul's going to say, why he cannot win. So, Eclat de Rire, I know what you're going to say. No horse has won the Gold Cup with a run on heavy ground that season.
Absolutely.
Bingo. So,
am I that predictable?
No. So basically, I backed him. He was a bit of a forum horse early on in the season. Big price, and he was kind of an obvious play, especially if he had cash out. I would be happy to just give him another shot. He was backed off the boards, 3-1 favourite in the Ladbroke. Connections were expecting a massive run. Obviously, pulled up. I thought he was travelling okay for probably the first half of the race, but yeah, never laid a glove. A lot of people would have said if he can't win a Ladbroke off that mark, he's got no chance in the Gold Cup. I think you have to just give him another shot. Obviously, Jackadam, he went into the race off 1-4-2, which was an absolute certainty, but he never fired. Probably fitness, actually. I mean, we know with Mullins how he doesn't kind of basically he doesn't really get a lot of his big players ready at that time of year. But he came 28 lengths back in 8th place in the Ladbroke, so ran no race, went on to win the TSDs, and came second in the Gold Cup. I wouldn't be surprised if Eclat de Rire follows that path. I think he probably does need heavy ground, which he might not get in the Gold Cup. He'll probably get that in the Trustees in January. I think one of the reasons why I'm looking at a big price as well, and I'm willing to forgive a run that everyone would kind of say he had to win that to be a Gold Cup horse. Again, it's just another little stat. If you looked at the last 7 years, obviously 21 placed horses, the amount of horses that were unbeaten prior to March, there were 8 out of the 21 horses. So obviously, not that surprisingly, it's a lot more likely you're going to be beaten before March than you are with a string of ones to your name. And actually, the Gold Cup, with Albion Photo, because they've been running once in the season, the less runs you do, the more likely you are, especially that Tremor race. It was a bit of a freebie, basically, for Albion Photo to be unbeaten going into the Gold Cup. So of those 21 placed horses, if you took out Albion Photo and Native River in 2018, because of an injury, those 2 horses just had 1 run that season. So if you actually target horses that had filled the places in the last 7 years, only 4 of the 17 were unbeaten going into March. So I think I'm happy to, if they've disappointed for whatever reason, that's not something to rule them out. So for me, he was heavy favourite for the Ladbroke. He's the kind of horse that he could easily, depending how they prepare him for his next run, it could be a 20-1 shot again. At the same time, it could be 100-1. I don't think he's going to be good enough, but yeah, he's one of these horses that, I mean, plenty thought that he could win the Ladbroke. Like I said, I'm not going to have 1 run say he can't win a Gold Cup, and I certainly wouldn't be having a kind of knee-jerk reaction that he had to win that race, because to me he just didn't run his race. If he had plugged on and finished the race, maybe I would have said, yeah, that's his level. But clearly something wasn't right that day. And again, I think like Paul says, you don't need. You need to be a Grade 1 horse to win the race, but you don't need to be a Grade Horse 1 to place. Manila Rocco, Annabelle Fly, Giant Bolster on his own. It's easy to sit here now and go, he's not going to be good enough, not going to be good enough, not going to be good enough. Generally, they're the kind of horses that will fill a place. To me, 66-1. He'd be a long shot that I'd consider, but he's by no means a big fancy. I think Kev's putting words in my mouth again.
I don't know. I'd fancy a bit of Kev's laughing gas before I go. Hey, clap to here.
I definitely prefer the thing. If he'd been beaten and looked to run his race and just beaten, like I'd like him a lot less than being able to go, yeah, that wasn't its true running, so we give him another go.
I think he's just, again, I don't think he's up to level, but he's only had 7 career runs over his name, so
yeah,
he's probably not going to be good enough, but he's not really had the chance to fully give that evidence, I don't think.
Listen, I don't think I'd ever want to talk anybody out of an each way bet on a horse that's 66-1. I'd never want to do that. He wouldn't be one for me. There are a couple of hard stats against him there. One is the heavy ground thing, which may well have contributed to what happened at Newbury, by the way. That pulled up is a real worry for me. You don't see Gold Cup winners and places with letters in front of the name generally, so that would be a concern. They said he lost his action. Very often when horses lose the action, they don't get it back that season. And look, for what it's worth, I'm not sure we'll even see him turn up at the Gold Cup. I think Henry de Bromhead's pretty stacked already, isn't he? I think if I was at them now, I'd perhaps be thinking about something like the Irish National, maybe, or something like that. But who knows? It could be one that could turn up anywhere. But he wouldn't be on my mind, I don't think. But as I say, at 66-1, I think that's fair enough. I don't think anybody should be trying to talk anybody out of a 66-1 bet. It's just a personal preference, really. The unexposed thing is absolutely true. I think there is one thing that sort of sits in my mind with that. I think people got excited about what he might have done in the RSA. He obviously found it was too far out to know what that could have been. And I think because it felt like a bit of a weak division, people wanted a horse to come out of that race, and he was the one to sort of latch onto. And in the race prior to that, at Nace, he beat Ascari at 10 and Pencil Full of Lead, I think. And Pencil Full of Lead hasn't been seen since, so I don't think he necessarily finished his race. And I've just had that sneaking suspicion at the time that Ascari at 10 was running for a handicap mark for the Irish Grand National. So I'm not sure that race really amounted to much, if I'm honest. I think he may have got a little bit of a freebie in that race, and you look at his previous race, he didn't really beat a whole lot. And then subsequently he's beat Conflated over 3 miles, and Conflated I don't think is a real 3 miler, so or at the right level. But again, I can see why he was backed at Newbury, because he was backed on the unknown novice factor. But I just don't think he's going to be the horse that I think people really wanted him to be. So anyway, as I say, there's plenty of other cases we can make.
If we're doing long shots, though, Paul, like you could put up, based on last week, you could put up Chantry House at 12-1 as a big price long shot.
Nice dig, I like that. That's a good one. So look, just to start wrapping up, what are your bets? So I think you two guys are both a Plutard, and I'm Minella Indo. But if you're putting up, look, Minella Indo, I wouldn't put up as a bet right now, the same as you wouldn't put a Plutard. But I'm actually okay with Minella Indo at 5-1, including him in multiples. I think that's okay. So I wouldn't put anybody off using him in multiples. Even each way multiples at 5-1. You can get some really filthy bets with that. What about the each way shots? Where do we finally land on that?
I think for me, if we allow Albion Photo would be the absolute standout 20-1. I'd put that up as a bet still.
Yeah.
As closest, I'm moderately interested in Fakir Dudari as well. A lot more obvious for the Ryanair, but I think I did read briefly today. I think they're gonna try him in the Leopardstown 3 miles at Christmas, and it just obviously there's some potential there. To be fair, I did look at his runs back, and it doesn't look like he's screaming out to be over the longer trips, but he's one that has definitely got some class about him, but probably not going to be good enough. Next destination at 80-1, like I'm teetering on whether to back that, and that's pretty much it. I think someone did mention Imperial Aura, didn't they, just before? Has anyone got any thoughts on? His chase was it his chase debut, and he jumped absolutely stunning, didn't he? Like a couple of seasons
he
back.
jumped Galvin to the ground, didn't he? In the lowest handicap chase, I think.
Yeah,
the festival.
Chase,
yeah.
And he was just.
I don't think he stays for me.
Yeah,
no, I'm the same.
And
that's just.
And again, I think his jump is too vulnerable. You know, he's made too many. He's come down, twice in the last 4 or something. Is it?
Yeah, and I did really want to like St. Calvados. That's one I considered, but again, it's just too hard to see him as an out and out stayer for this. He didn't seem to stay there. He kept on fine in the King George, but you'd want to see a stronger staying performance to really. I love that horse. I love him, but he's just not. I mean, Jono, you'll remember obviously the 100-1 tip in a 5-runner Arkle, backed each way, finished 4th. Unbelievable stuff. Unbelievable stuff. So I've always been a big fan, and then he just managed to not reel in Min that year that we were all so big on Min. Oh, my heart was in my mouth. It was horrible. But I really wanted to make the kit. I really like St. Calvados, but I can't see that either. So as with the closest I got to.
Just on St. Calvados, he's with Paul Nicholls now, so no reason why Paul Nicholls can't find a little bit more improvement, but just have a sneaking suspicion that he may see him more of an entry horse.
Yeah,
Betfair Bowl type horse, and we haven't seen him yet this season either, so we don't even know whether he's fitting well because he missed a
just on
well, didn't
he? Yeah. Just on, you mentioned Fakir Dudari. He was the other one. Yeah, him and Eclectoria were kind of two long shots now that I think could shorten. Like you say, he's going to go 3 miles at Christmas. And he's already had two goes at 3 miles. It doesn't look like he stays. I think he stays on over the middle trip, which gives the impression. I think connections they're very key. They keep trying to try him at 3 miles. If he could place in the Savills chase, maybe. So again, if you got cash out 66-1, there's probably no harm in placing that bet. But I think essentially he's not quite good enough, and rather than connections thinking 3 mile 2 will suit, they're kind of just running out of options, and they're just going to try and keep giving him another shot while he's young. But he was another that I could see a case of just backing him with Christmas in mind, and you could probably cash out for 60-70% of your stake, if in all likelihood he doesn't really come anywhere. But
yeah, he strikes me as the sort of horse that if it was decent ground at the Dublin Racing Festival, he could run a really nice race in that 3 mile chase, and people would get excited about him, and then he'd be out with the washing in the Gold Cup. He's that kind of horse for me. And that's often the case. You tend to find you get a lot of those sort of 3 mile specialists, Grade 1 specialists around the likes of Leopardstown, don't you? But when they come to the Gold Cup, over further and a real war, then, they're the ones that first on the retreat. And as you say, Jono, I don't have him down as a thorough stayer. He's probably a horse that can place in the Ryanair maybe, but the Ryanair doesn't necessarily suit his run style. That really is a race that's won by horses that are prominent and really take the race on. So it may well be he just ends up he's had his chance at the festival, and he's going to win his races elsewhere. But yeah, no, it's definitely one that we should have talked about.
I wonder if they changed his run style, because didn't he, when he burst on as a juvenile, didn't he make all? We were all a bit giddy about him then, when the year he ran in the Supreme. Didn't he make all? He was certainly more prominent than now.
He ran in the November meeting at Cheltenham, and I can't remember who he ran
before
against.
Before JP bought him, and he.
Yeah, when it was an Orange Buzz, I was there that day.
Yeah. I can't remember if he made all. To be honest, I might just be remembering the end of the race when he was clear.
Sure
maybe if they changed tactic on him.
I think he just flew up the hill from memory. Don't think he made.
Yeah, maybe.
I think he just flew up the hill.
I think he might have. I think he was prominent. I think he might have made all on the early novice chases. I think when he beat Mellon, obviously he had the Samcro race. He had to wait for age all the time, and I think he was. Because
I don't know. Maybe if they change run style, it'd be interesting. Maybe it's a different angle. But
he's a young enough horse. Often young horses they start to develop stamina as they get older. So who knows? That maybe he can still be some kind of contender. But
I could have been somebody.
What was it? He was fourth in the Supreme, wasn't he? He ran as a juvenile in the Supreme. He didn't go to Triumph. Because he got the allowances, didn't he?
Because that was the year.
Was it Classical Dreams? Yeah, I think.
Yes, and it was the year they had Sir Eric.
Triumph. Yeah. I mean,
I'll tell you which race he ran in. It was when Jockey was the thought to be Nicky Henderson's Supreme horse, and that went off a hot favourite. And I can't remember. It must have been the November meeting. At Cheltenham that year.
I could look it up, but
it doesn't matter really, does it?
He was a form horse, that one. Scooby, wasn't it? The whole form was on a Jockey.
What was it? I thought. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, the double grip. Yeah. He was rubbish.
I'll tell you who else ran in that race. Protectorat. Protectorat was in that same race. Actually, do that. Look it up. That's really got me now. I'm pretty sure Protectorat ran in that same juvenile hurdle that day.
Okay, Doodlery. Hold, please. Can't spell it. When am I looking? November meeting?
I think it was the November meeting.
How far back are we going?
Could have been October, but I think it was the November meeting. And it would have been 20.
It was the January. It was the January.
Trials.
Trials day. So Jockey was third. Our Power ran. Protectorat was fifth. Dogon.
I remember the race. And wasn't Nelson River was down the field as well? Because I think I backed that each way for some reason. Or was that earlier in the season?
No, he was sixth. Yeah, that's the one. Useful for the Gold Cup.
Yeah, but actually, quite interesting that some of those juveniles, are regarded as stayers later on over fences. So, Protectorat we're talking about in the same Gold Cup. What's that? 4 years on. It'll be 4 years on from there. So, Tiger Roll won a National Hunt Chase after running in the Triumph Hurdle as a juvenile. Some of these juveniles just need time to develop the stamina.
So your 1, 2, 3 is Chantry House, Protectorat, and Frodon.
Think of the TriCast on that one. Ooh.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The TriCast is going to be. It's going to be next destination, Galvin and Ascaria 10. That's my 1, 2, 3.
I don't think Ascaria 10 will go to the Gold Cup, but
I might tweak the
think.
No,
Should we end on who's our 1, 2, 3 in the Gold Cup?
Jeez, that's a tough one. I have to say. I'll say my winner's Minarindo. I'm happy to say that. I think if I was pushed at an each way that's going to run on into a place, it'd probably be Galvin. I think the race potentially gets run to suit him. He's the kind that'll, as I said, Dave will have him switched off and he'll be running on at the end. And he'll pick up the pieces. He'll be that kind of horse. And And I'm 100% agree with you that 20-1, probably the real bet at the moment is Album Photo. That's my view.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say 1.5 hours in. The 1, 2, 3 is A plus tard, Manila Indo, Album Photo.
Brilliant.
There you go.
and with a bit of luck, we can play this whole podcast back again next year without having to record it because it'll be the same thing.
I am gonna A plus tard's gonna fall. A Manila Indo is gonna get beaten. Winner's gonna be Album Photo. Second is gonna be Next Destination, and then third is gonna be something like.
Oh, just say Chantry House, please. Just do it, please.
Yeah.
Third is gonna be. No, my 1, 2, 3 would be A plus tard, Manila Indo, and Album Photo. It's impossible not to.
God, you two are brilliant.
Next Destination is that. No, definitely not. Fakir Doodaree, Next Destination, and Asterian Falange. My Drogo. They're going to step my Drogo up.
All we should
after he wins.
You two should have said those three are going to be in the same order this week, and then I could have done an hour's monologue. There you go.
Yeah, easy.
So look, let's wrap up. I think the poll this week should be the best value bets in the current Gold Cup markets. And I think it's probably worth allowing people to have more than one choice if we're talking about value. And value can be for a winner, or it can be, an each way long shot, can't it? So,
or it could just be how bad is Chantry House's price? Worst bet ever. Yes or no?
Yeah, you run the site.
Come at me.
You'll just keep.
Come at me for him.
Yourself all the time. You'll have about 50 votes.
Come at me.
Okay. Look, so
what will happen is Kev will end up back. Do you remember when Kev came back on the forum, slated Galvin's chances within 24 hours? He had backed him.
The beauty of the forum, Jono, and I shouldn't need to tell you this. The beauty of the forum is that people can make cases and you can be wrong, and it takes a big man to accept that they're wrong. And I am a big man. Yeah, but that chance. Yeah, come at me with your Chantry House cases. 12-1. I'll back him.
There you go.
Easy.
Well, what can I say?
What's next?
So,
like and subscribe.
Next week, boys, we're doing the big hurdle races for over Christmas. So you need to get a bit of form study in. Need to remember what runs where and all the rest of it. But I think what we should be looking for is 3 selections each for hurdlers over Christmas. There we go.
I might have to bring a sub. I might have to bring a sub in for mine.
Oh, you're going to throw.
Got to do some. Doing any prep work. Prep work. It's supposed to be fun.
You're going to throw a sickie if you see it coming.
Yeah, I'm still on
we'll do the chases on the week before Christmas. And just for everybody's benefit, we're probably going to have Christmas, New Year off. So that'll be the last 2 for us this side of Christmas. If you guys want to ask any questions, or you've got anything you want to add to those 2 podcasts, then post it on the Fat Jockey forum. But I think that's it for another week, boys. Thanks for the company, and I guess we'll see everybody next week. Cheers, boys.
See you later, chumps.
Cheers, guys. Bye.